Okay guys, here we go. Section 2. The nature of time, space, and matter revisited. I promise you it's not going to be as boring as it sounds like it will be. Topic A. The nature of time revisited. Topic B. The nature of space, a fourth dimension. Topic C. The nature of matter, good or evil. Topic D. The nature of evil itself. Topic E. The nature of man's distant, eternal past. See, I told you we was going to get into some deep stuff here, guys. Hang on, you'll see. Introduction, Section 2. In this section, I will attempt to expand on the concepts presented in Section 1 and postulate the possible consequences of their being true. In other words, if Section 1 were true, then Section 2 would be the probable results or a logical progression of the subject matter. All of these concepts are designed to help you begin to understand and appreciate. Examples of these complex interrelationships are evident all around us, but are such a common and accepted part of our day-to-day lives that they are never given any conscious consideration. For example, a man must eat, drink, breathe, etc. I submit to you that there is no possibility of these infinitely complex interdependencies being accidental, and that they therefore must have been designed, which of necessity requires a designer. These first two sections are designed to make you think, to make you aware that your surroundings are so much more complex than you realize, to get you thinking outside the box, so to speak. I want you to realize that God is not only limitless or without constraints of any kind spatially, but He is limitless eternally as well. Topic 1. The nature of time revisited. I have come to the conclusion that when we speak of God as being eternal, that is, as having existed from eternity past, and that He will continue to exist for eternity future, that we do a great disservice to our Creator. When we make such a statement, we are saying in effect that God is limited to the same linear existence as is man. Such cannot be the case. There are no limitations which are capable of influencing His existence. Rather than conceive of a God who has existed in the past and who will exist in the future, we should express an appreciation for and an understanding of the true degree and scope of God's infinite existence, and say rather that He exists, present tense, in the past, and that He exists in the future. Such is the reason that God is omnipresent and omniscient, not only because He merely knows the future, but because He already exists in it. Let us say that God looks at the entirety of time as a book which He has written. It's one of those books where you, the reader, get to choose different options during the progression of the storyline at different key points in the story, and the choices that you make ultimately determine the final outcome of the characters and the flow of the narrative. God wrote this book and established its basic outline. During the course of the book, warnings and advice from the author are given as to the best choices to make. He leaves all the interim decisions entirely up to you. But at the conclusion of the story, there are only two final destinations possible, heaven or hell. The destination at which you arrive will be the sole consequence of your own decisions made during the course of the book, and none other may be held accountable for the resultant condition in which you find yourself at the conclusion of the story. I realize that this analogy isn't perfect, but I believe the point is made. This book, I'll entitle it The Entire History and Future of Mankind, has already been written in its entirety. Even though it is each individual who has supplied or will yet supply the individual details of the work is nonetheless complete and has been since before God ever created Adam. The only way that man can begin to conceive of such a thing is to look at the future not as something which hasn't yet happened, but rather as something which we haven't yet experienced. The future has already happened, otherwise God could not have perfect foreknowledge of it. If the future were alterable by man's will, it would nullify God's ability to have perfect foreknowledge. and it would of necessity make God's foreknowledge not only imperfect and subject to change, but would in fact require constant revision on his part, and in so doing prove fallibility on the part of our Creator. Fallibility, I can assure you, is not a trait of our universal God. Further evidence of this being the case may be found in the Scriptures themselves. In the book of Revelation, John is taken to heaven in the Spirit and becomes an eyewitness to the things which will come upon the earth. He witnessed the horrors of the Great Tribulation period, and then he testifies that what he has both seen and heard is true. He then writes it all down for the church as a reliable revelation of what is yet to come upon the earth. Here we have John as an eyewitness giving testimony as to what he has personally seen and heard. God did not take John to heaven to show him some sort of a celestial IMAX movie with Dolby Digital surround sound and some really cool special effects to demonstrate what the future would be like when it finally happened. John was a witness to the actual events as they were transpiring before his very eyes. He was watching the real thing happen in real time. God simply brought John in his spiritual existence to the future and showed him the final reality of his judgments on the earth and the wicked. This being the case, it would then follow that not only does God already exist in the future, but we do as well. Told you guys this was going to get deep. Every decision that you or I will ever make has already been made. Every place we will ever go, we have already gone, and every sin we will ever commit has already been committed. If then God exists in the future, it follows that he interacts with his creation in the future. For his word to us is that he will never leave us or forsake us. I don't know about you, but I have always been taught that God knows every sin that I will ever commit, and that knowing even this, he still sent his Son to die for me. That every sin committed during the course of my life, past, present, and future, were all paid for on the cross. God knew every sin I would ever commit because he witnessed me committing them in what we as humans call the future, but what is, in fact, in God's eternal existence, his now. As a point to ponder, I wonder if the reason man experiences déjà vu, that eerie feeling that you've been somewhere before, or experienced some conversation or scene being played out before, could possibly be the veil of the eternal timeline being drawn back ever so slightly, and the reality being that you have in fact already been here or heard this before. Let us discuss this eternal timeline for a few moments. God exists in every second of time, past, present, and future. He does not cease to exist in the past, or his absence there would affect the timeline, and it would become a past where he had never existed. Nor could there be a future in which God is not currently existing, or his omnipresence, present everywhere in every time, would be limited by the finite confines of time. It is the same with us. We do not cease to exist in the past, or we wouldn't be here in the present, just as our absence in the present would result in our not being present in the future. The timeline cannot be changed. It is what it is. It is what it always was, and it is what it will always be. We could never go back and live in the past as we are now. We would be who we were then. However, as God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, he would simply exist in the past as he is today, and who he is today is who he always was or ever will be. God doesn't merely exist in the eternal timeline. He is the fullness embodiment of the eternal timeline. Throughout the ages, time has generally been looked upon as either being ahead of, future, or behind, past us. Instead of employing this traditional view, I want you to try to conceive of time as being layered, one second upon the next, with each successive layer concealing the previous one. Notice I said concealing, not replacing. The past is overshadowed, or veiled, if you will, from the present, just as the future, moment by moment, will veil the present. It is necessary that time, in its entirety, fullness, or completeness, be veiled from us as humans, or our limited visual perception of the world would be nothing more than one chaotic blur. Our human senses are not geared towards or equipped to delineate all time simultaneously. We would see things that no longer exist in the present as though they had never ceased to exist, which they actually haven't. We would see recently constructed subdivisions with forests and streams occupying the same space as the houses, fields of recently planted crops with Native Americans hunting deer and buffalo, and dinosaurs roaming the countryside simultaneously. Man is not geared towards understanding eternal ideas, as he has nothing experientially to judge them by. As I have attempted to do throughout this book, allow me now to try to draw you a word picture of this concept that will make it more comprehensible to you. Let's consider how a movie is made. It is filmed one frame at a time, and in each successive frame there are minute differences which give the perception of fluid motion when placed one after the other and viewed in rapid succession. Now imagine that the location being filmed remained a constant. For example, let's say the area being filmed was one small area of a cornfield, and the camera was locked into position so that the boundaries of the scene were unchangeable. Let us further say that we filmed this location non-stop over the course of a month. Having done this, we now take the film we made, and instead of viewing it in a normal sequential manner, we laid each individual frame one on top of the other and attempted to look through the entire stack of individual frames at the same time. Whenever a breeze blew, each individual stalk of corn would have been filmed in numerous positions. If a flock of birds had flown by, their passing would appear as a single blur across the sky. If a bug has landed on the lens, wherever it crawled would be nothing but a blur, and so on, until after a month's time it might possibly, and in fact quite probably, would be impossible to see through such a stack of individual frames. Now multiply this single scene filmed over the course of a single month, and multiply it by the entire universe over the course of 1,000 years, and you'll begin to see my point. Time, when dissected and truly examined, at least so far as the human mind may do so, has so many possible avenues which may be explored, and so many conclusions which might be reached, that for it to ever be fully comprehensible in its intricate complexities is ultimately an impossibility. However, considering the seemingly limitless possibilities that it presents, making the effort is a worthwhile undertaking, if for no other reason than to make it plainly evident from one of the more seemingly benign and common aspects of our existence that our life is complex beyond our abilities to understand it. Well, guys, what do you think? Not so boring, huh? Making you do some thinking now about the fact that you already exist in the future, you just haven't gotten there yet? That the future isn't something that hasn't happened yet, it's just something that you haven't experienced yet? Told you guys we was going to get pretty deep here. Hope you're still following this, and I hope it's still making you do some thinking. I guess one of the things that made me start thinking along these lines was the experience that John had on Patmos, where he was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day, and he was taken to heaven in the future. In fact, all the way to the time when God's wrath was getting poured out on the earth. And John at that point was in the future watching what was really happening in real time, and then came back to his own time on that island again and wrote it all down. That's Bible. I mean, if you don't believe that, then you don't believe what the Bible teaches. And that being the case, that John went to the future all the way to the end of the age, and God was there doing all this stuff, and Jesus was there doing all this stuff, and he was watching it happen, then that means God is right now in the future. He took John to it, so he's there just as much as he's here, and just as much as he is back in the days when they hung his son on the cross. We'll get to thinking about that some more in this book too. I try to cross all my T's and dot all my I's in this book. And I'm trying to take the subjects that we cover, and as we progress in the book, expand on them and give more detail so that your mind keeps getting blown and keeps getting expanded as to just how many possibilities and probabilities there are about all of this. We do already exist in the future, we just haven't experienced it yet. And every decision you're ever going to make has already been made. And every place you've ever gone, you've already been. It's mind-blowing, or it blows my mind anyway. I hope this book is causing you guys to think. And once again, because people are getting all riled up, the things I'm putting forth in this book are not thus saith the Lord. They're thus imagineth Jim. So, you guys will have to make your own minds up if there's anything to this or not. And like I said, if it's not for you, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I understand that not everybody thinks like I do, or even likes having deep, intricate thoughts like I do. But I love doing mental gymnastics like this. And one of the things I'm looking forward to the most about when I get to heaven is all of the knowledge I'm going to gain. All of the things I can learn, all of the little avenues that my mind, my perfect mind then, can travel down and see everything behind the scenes that God had to put in place for everything to work the way it did. I am looking forward to that so much. Alright guys, we'll get on to the next topic. God bless you, and I'll see you soon.